Another interesting headline here on the Daily Nation. Of course, Daily Nation has the same story about Kenya's debt, but hidden deeply inside the Daily on page 34 in the business segment. On the front page of the Daily Nation, apart Musalia now sings his own tune. Now, NASA leader Raila Odinga wants a new election in August, but his ANC partner Mudavadi is not feeling the vibe and says the coalition should focus on 2022. Two people in the same band striking different notes on the guitar, whose melody will carry the audience. Of course, whatever has been happening in NASA, within the NASA coalition, makes for a very interesting, would make for a very interesting, tragic story. This unity that they've talked about, it appears that it ended at some point. I know you do political analysis as well. Do you think that probably it is time these parties, these affiliate parties within NASA, just call it quits and they focus on 2022, because it appears they're all speaking at cross purposes. Everyone is, they seem not to understand each other. Someone talks about an election in August, the other one says we're talking about 2022. Even in Parliament, they disagree on even nominees for various positions. And they seem to be squabbling and endlessly about every single thing. Don't you think that that could actually end up hurting the minority side of Parliament, the opposition, as we know it?
Definitely it is hurting, and it's even sad that we employed our MPs in the opposition to go and represent us in Parliament, but they're not doing that. They have boycotted vetting of CESs and ambassadors and all that. That is their work. They're supposed to do that. And initially they started going to Parliament to sign off and not attending sessions. So they just want to guarantee their paycheck. That is wrong. We do not employ them to do that. They have to do their work. But then moving forward to NASA politics, I think any house or any political party always have differences. But then the biggest with them, I think, happened after the Raila swearing in. And there was no show for Musalia and Kalonzo. That, I think, that's when the shaft hits the fan at that particular point. But then these are people who came together, of course, with the sole aim of getting power as a NASA coalition. They did not get power. So the little they have, everyone wants.
Shouldn't they have actually given up at that point? You came together to get power, you did not get it, just go your separate ways.
No, with politics, you know, one election ends and the next election cycle starts. You start studying for the next elections. Do you think surprisingly that's how our politicians
do you see a possibility of NASA as a unit remaining as one heading towards 2022?
It will only depend on one man, Raila Odinga. Is he going to fight the next election or not? Is he going to endorse these other people? If he does, NASA is done. It will only be ODM and other parties. There is also that. So then Musalia, I think he knows when he's been beaten. He knows that there are not going to be elections in August the way the former Prime Minister demands. So Raila has already, Musalia, has already focused now on 2022. But then now they are squabbling over positions because that is the only thing they can get. You did not get government, so the little, you're hungry, you did not get the meaningful. So whatever small thing you can get, that is now what you can you can now fight for, at least so that you don't starve. So with Parliamentary Service Commission and all other small posts that they are fighting about, every party feels that they're entitled to that. But then Musalia coming up, I don't know whether they still have that summit of theirs at NASA.
It still should be there.
It should still be there. But then when one core principles comes and tells you that we're now focused on 2022, and the captain of the team allegedly telling you that we are still pushing for electoral reforms and we want to go for elections in August, and then the deputy captain tells you I'm ready to be sworn in anytime. So it's three tunes differently from the same camp.
Okay, well, that's squabbling.
But they have to actually get their rights together, because they should be giving Jubilee a right for their money, but then a fight for their money. But they're not doing that. Well, Jubilee is now having an easy ride anywhere.
Is sitting pretty in Parliament and elsewhere. Well, that squabbling within NASA still managing to get top headlines on the dailies this morning. It is a top story on the front page of the Daily Nation. We're almost done with the news review, but there's one more headline, a small one at that, but I still feel it's something that we should be able to talk about. It's on page 3 of the Daily Nation. Kenya still opposes bid to legalize gay relations. It's on page 3. The state has opposed a bid to have consensual same-sex relations between adults legalized. In a filed case documents, the state, through the Attorney General, told the court that it should be guided by the country's values, and in particular its conservatism in sexual matters. This is one of the interesting things that could be before our courts as we speak. Of course, election petitions have been hogging the limelight, the media space, but there are other things happening within the judiciary, the corridor of justice. This is one of them. The Attorney General is involved, very much involved in this, but in as far as opposing that. But there are people who keep on believing that this can actually happen, that something like this could be legalized. This kind of push, according to what the Constitution says, where do we stand?
So far, according to the Constitution, we don't recognize same-sex marriages. That is our Constitution. And we come from a point where, as a country, we are a very religious country. And the values that we hold do not provide for same-sex marriages. Of course, there is what they now call the progressive human rights. This falls in part of that. And someone will tell you, it is my right to have this. I mean, you can't stretch it the way you want it. But then at the end of the day, I think it becomes more so of a personal belief what you actually think it's right or wrong. You can't try stretching it and say, okay, human rights are advancing and so we should advance. This is a religious country. When you start talking about same-sex marriages, then someone will tell you, where do you want our kids to go in the next few years? You know, so it is one of those sensitive discussions that no one wants to touch it. Yes. The same thing like abortion. There are those discussions you don't want to touch. For a long time as a country, we frowned upon abortion until we had to move up to the point where we have to cover it with the medical with medical reasons. That's where the abortion is permitted. But then it wasn't like that. So with time, this what we think that are westernized cultures are finding themselves into our society, sadly.
But now the National Gay and Lesbian Human Rights Commission, through its chief executive, filed this 2 years ago, challenging 2 sections of the Constitution which criminalize consensual same-sex relations between adults. Now, it is already in the Constitution. Now, looking at the technicalities of law, when you challenge a section of the Constitution, what's the possible outcomes? What kind of judgment do you expect on this in as far as the remedy? When you challenge a section of the Constitution, you say this should not be there.
I think that is from where I sit as a lawyer. Any lawyer should actually tell you. Of course, we disagree most of the time, but on that one, I think we agree. You can challenge an act of parliament. You can challenge any other law, but you cannot challenge sections of the Constitution. That is the supreme law of the land. It is what the people of Kenya gave unto themselves and said, this is the law that is going to guide us on top and above any other law. It's like the Bible of the country. You cannot challenge that. You cannot pick what you want and pick what you don't want. When you're challenging the Constitution, it's interesting. I'll actually want to actually look at the pleadings and see the reasoning of the lawyer who is moving to challenge sections of the Constitution. Because when you're challenging the Constitution, you're challenging against what? Because that is the mirror, that is the reference point to any other law that this country has.
Are you saying that instead of challenging this, of pursuing this matter in court, probably the best way would be to lobby Parliament and try to see if at all they can go the referendum way?
Not even lobby Parliament. That's the section they're trying to challenge is not something that even Parliament can amend. You have to go back to the people of Kenya to amend the Constitution via a referendum. So when you're challenging section of the Constitution, I mean, which other law do you want the judge to apply to nullify the Constitution? Because the moment he does that, it even means he's bigger than the Constitution itself, and the Constitution is what gives him the authority to sit there as a judge. It's actually what defines you to even move to that court. So when you're challenging the Constitution, it means you want to abrogate yourself the powers of the Kenyan people and legislate on their behalf and say, this is what I'm giving you as a country. You can't do that. You're not God.
Wow. This is just one of the many interesting headlines on the dailies this morning. A lot more headlines. Of course, the Kuru Court unveiled the 21 shadow cabinet team yesterday. You can read that on page 5 of the Daily Nation as well. One more on page 2. Villager who killed neighbor, drank his blood, was a loner. Very interesting headlines this morning, but we may not be able to take a look at that as well. Remember, it is Fashion Friday, so we'll be having that discussion on accessories. Joey Mudengi is on standby with that. Plus, DJ Roy Tibo is also in the house, so he's going to be trying to bring it down with some music as well. Thank you so much, Jesse Odwor, an advocate of the High Court, helping us look at the headlines this morning. My name is Freddie Ndimuli from Meets. Good morning.